There it is. Took a while.
Hello, this is Jim.
Hi, Emmy, it's Alicia. You're muted.
Hello.
Hey, we are good to go. MCAT was here super early and we know it's working, so that's fantastic. We don't need plan B or C. eScribe is, yeah, eScribe setup and the networking link to YouTube also worked. So I think we are gonna be super set.
Excellent, wonderful.
We know it's working, so that's fantastic. We don't need plan B or C. eScribe is, yeah, eScribe setup and the networking link to YouTube also work. So I think we are going to be super set.
Excellent, wonderful.
Hi, everyone. Man, we're on time.
Hi there. Yeah, looking good for time.
Hey, Jamie, do you mind doing a roll call at the beginning here, just of people from the board?
As part of the meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the staff's going to do that too.
I think they're going to be a little preoccupied initially, so.
Oh, sure.
we can do
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
I think eventually they will be doing it. Hopefully.
Looks like you're at the office, Steve.
Yeah, familiar looking map.
It is very much so.
I figured that would be a benign background, but
I miss it.
I ought to come visit.
Oh, yeah. You know I do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't know, nothing quite like Kathy's background.
Amy, while we're waiting to start, I see on the list of our board members that nearly everybody has something behind their name. And I'm just wondering, do I have a category or am I just out there floating?
You're at large. And I did make
Okay.
that edit to admin. So it should have been added, but
Okay.
you are at large. Yeah, you're not just
Okay.
floating.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't mind either. I just wanted to know.
Very much grounded with us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still the alternate.
You're still alternate, and that's because we haven't done any meetings or interviews since COVID. So nothing has changed since then.
And did they have any plans?
The plans are still up in the air. Yeah, so the whole city is on like a hiring freeze right now, and so the fulfilling the committees is kind of last in the line of things to do, and especially because we've been making quorum every month, that they're actually trying to fill the committees that aren't making quorum, and we've actually been great. So because we've been acting good, we're going to be later on the list.
Were you in your office then this week, or are you there now?
I'm at home now,
Oh, yeah.
but I've been going in intermittently. And our office computers actually don't have camera, so It's funny. We have to go home to do Zoom.
Were there protests downtown today or?
Yeah, there were more downtown, it seemed like today than even yesterday. Did you see him, Paul? I saw you responding.
Yeah.
Saw
Same.
him last night about 6 o'clock, and it was pretty wild down there. A lot of yelling from both sides.
Yeah, I left the office at 5 and I drove by and it was ramping up for sure. There are two, I mean, it's like literally two sides of the corner.
I may have to jump up and open the door for some maintenance people that are coming around 7 to 7:30. I don't know if we'll be over by then, but if we aren't, I may have to jump up and let them in.
You can always stop your video too.
Yeah.
Just an option for everyone.
Hi, this is Soraya. We are ready whenever you guys are, and everyone is here except Bruce Harrelson. And Amy, I took you off of co-host.
Okay, thanks, Soraya.
Sure. This is Soraya. We are ready.
Okay. Welcome to the monthly Historic Preservation Commission meeting. This commission is comprised of volunteer members who all live in Missoula County. In addition to 3 professional members, the commission includes a downtown representative, 3 at-large members, and 2 at-large alternates. I am Jamie Lockman and serve as the chair of the commission. Paul Felicetti serves as vice chair. The Historic Preservation Commission was established by the Missoula City Council in 1989 and is charged with establishing a local historic preservation program, integrating historic preservation into local, state, and federal planning and decision-making processes. The program is designed to promote the preservation of historic and prehistoric sites, structures, objects, buildings, and historic districts. All of the meeting body members are attending from a remote location. We're holding this meeting virtually, so we'll be doing public comment a little differently than usual via a live call in a phone line, just like calling into a radio show or to make a pledge during a telethon. I'll call for general public comment, and on that item, I will take comments that are for items on the agenda and items that aren't on the agenda. I will also open the public comment phone lines on each agenda item. Each time we call for public comment, we'll put the numbers on the screen and the meeting with the meeting ID and give some time for you to go to your phones and call in, but you may want to write them down. When you call in, you'll be placed into a waiting room and I will take calls in the order they come in. When I call on you, please mute your TV or computer or there will be an echo. Tell us your name and your comment. Please be aware that there is a delay of about 50 seconds from what you are hearing at home in the actual meeting. So it's okay to begin speaking right away when I call on you. I'll be observing a speaking limit of 3 minutes so we can hear from everyone. Okay, let's get started. I'd like to call the meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to order. Can we please have a roll call of members to determine who is present?
Soraya or Alicia?
Yeah, they had asked that if Jamie could.
Oh, they okay.
Oh, they
They were
did.
gonna-
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Sorry. Steve Adler,
Here.
Kathy Bickenhauser,
Here.
Paul Filicetti,
Here.
Bruce Harrelson, absent, James McDonald,
Here.
and Kent Watson.
Here.
Okay, we are on to the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve last meeting's minutes?
I make a motion to approve last meeting's minutes.
I second that.
I'll call for a vote. Can we just do that orally? Or do we have to do a roll call vote?
I think orally.
All in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Can we do it by raising hands? I'm on the computer.
Oh,
All opposed? Abstentions? The minutes from last meeting's the minutes from last meeting are approved. Okay, so public comment? I don't think we have anybody additional besides us, right? Okay, we're on to new business, and Emmy will introduce the two items for the historic preservation grants.
Yeah, so this is for the new Montana Historic Preservation Grant through the Department of Commerce that SHPO is also a part of. Tonight we have two grant applicants who are going to present, and this is actually fulfilling their environmental assessment requests. They need to have, because it's a state grant, the ability to post publicly and to hold public comments. And the HPC is a prime example of how we can offer that to them. And it's really them talking to us about, and to the public actually more like, about whether they're trying to exempt from full environmental review, and then to receive public comment on that request to exemption. So we're just here to listen, we don't vote. And we're also here just to provide a public platform for the public to provide comment on that request. So our first one, Jamie, if you want to start our new business, you can call up our next one.
Sure. Our next one is Paul Filicetti for the Boone and Crockett Club.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna try and pull up a screen here.
You can use your share screen, and if you have any problems, just let us know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight on our take of the environmental review for the Boone and Crockett Club grant application project today. I'm Paul Filicetti, Historic Preservation Architect with A&E Designs here in Missoula, and I'll be giving a summary of the Historic Preservation Grant Program application we've submitted in regarding the environmental review, and address any questions you may have regarding our determination that our project is exempt in terms of the qualifications that I'll mention and describe later, and that term exempt is appropriate for this project. And with me on the line, I believe, is Jody Bishop. She's with the Boone and Crockett Club. So she and I are both here to address this project. Next slide. Okay, how do I get it to show up there?
So if you don't have it in full screen, sometimes with Zoom, it won't let you move to your slides. or if you do. So I sometimes toggle between. Zoom is weird like that.
Okay. I have two screens here. And it should be going to that slide. Why is it not going to that slide?
Is it full screen on your end or partial screen?
Full screen.
So maybe go to partial and then try.
Oh, there it is. Is that, did you see that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go try and go back if I can. Okay, so hard to go back. Well, I apologize. This is a new thing for me.
Even if you, maybe if you take it out of presentation mode, would it, on your end?
Okay.
Or I mean, like instead of like still share screen, but out of presentation, I don't, yeah. I've encountered this before on Zoom. It's really finicky like that.
Okay. Share. So we got that one. Let me go to the next one. Nothing. Okay. Hopefully it stays here. So, as background, the Boone and Crockett Club applied for a Montana Historic Preservation grant and reached out to Amy Shearer, the HP officer, to coordinate this public meeting as a means to solicit public comment regarding the environmental review record for the Boone and Crockett Club's Montana Historic Preservation Grant Application Project. The purpose of this presentation then is to have a public hearing to explain the project, including project activities, the project budget, possible sources of funding, potential costs that may be incurred by the citizens of Missoula as a result of the project, and seek public comments regarding any of these items. Anyone who has an opinion on this project or is interested in the project is encouraged to ask questions and express those opinions at the end of the presentation. Please know that you may provide comment orally during this meeting, or if you're more comfortable, you can submit those comments in writing to the Boone and Crockett Club at the address on the screen. They'll have to be received by Tuesday, June 11th, by the end of the day in order to qualify. Our grant application lists alternatives to the scope of work as outlined and recommended in the environmental assessment and environmental materials analysis of existing materials. That is, we recommend that environmental analysis of existing materials be performed prior to the work being permitted, and that review and compliance requirements would be in coordination with the City of Missoula Development Services for permits and inspections, which would require an environmental assessment effort be complete on the project. I'm trying to advance to the next slide. Okay, so here we are. This is just a slide in terms of the background, where the state is looking at the position we're at in terms of the activities and of the grant process. The area clouded in red is where we're at today, and seek your comments. We submitted the grant application based on the project being exempt from the environmental, rather than an environmental impact statement, which is the alternative, and that would be under ARM, the Administrative Rules of Montana, ARM 8.2.304. And we recommend that the work activities require a determination of the effects of their action on the quality of the human environment through an environmental assessment. It includes 3 parts. The first would be a phase 1 environmental testing of the exterior finishes and materials to identify any that are hazardous. And that would move on to a phase 2. Phase 2 would be to work up drawings and specifications that would be in compliance with the Montana Department of Environmental Quality. And those would be used to outline the process for permitting and mitigating those conditions found in phase 1. And in phase 3 would be the actual remediation and mitigation process done by a licensed environmental contractor in compliance with DEQ requirements. So the 105-year-old Milwaukee Depot has been home of the Boone and Crockett Club since 1992 and is one of the 62 individually listed buildings on the National Register of Historic Places in Missoula. That is, it's one of the 62 historic resources the HBC has jurisdiction over by ordinance. The Missoula, or the Milwaukee Depot, or Boone and Crockett Club, is located at 250 Station Drive here in Missoula. It includes the historic passenger building seen on the left, the taller one with the 2 towers, and the baggage building seen on the right. Today's meeting agenda included a scope and description of the project, which I'm be summarizing in the next few slides. So the exterior condition assessment that A&E conducted in 2019 was specific to exterior deterioration issues on the building. And that resulted in a series of recommendations for preserving and restoring the National Register listed building. These recommendations then went on to form the foundation for the Montana Historic Preservation Grant application, which is included with your meeting agenda. And as outlined in that information, the resulting Montana Historic Preservation Grant program activities related to the roof, gutters, downspouts, soffits, and paint finishes include the removal and replacement of the non-historic drip edge metal flashing and asphalt shingle roof finishes, installation of a Spanish clay tile roof material that matches the original historic condition seen in the photo here, that would return a significant character defining feature back to the facility that was removed from the building in the 1980s. You may be familiar with that product. Emmy gave us a presentation on it, I believe in March. It was the same clay tile product that is proposed for the Northern Pacific Depot here in Missoula. The scope of work would continue with pruning of overgrown planting and foliage that overhangs the building roof, repair of roof drains to ensure proper drainage, repair of flashing conditions between the existing Spanish clay tile roof on the north wall of the west tower, where there's a moisture issue and causing some interior damage, cleaning and repairing metal gutters and downspouts to ensure proper operation, removing PVC downspouts and replacing them with historically accurate downspouts matching the existing historic condition, repairing and any deteriorated exterior paint finishes, and replacement of damaged wood soffits and bracket materials seen in the image here as well to match historic conditions, and then priming and painting those exterior paint finishes. So in terms of that scope of work, some of the environmental issues are there that we would be dealing with are potentially paint products. You can see some of the mastics that have been put on the clay tile roof here. So those are the ones where we don't know the conditions there that we'd have to test and make a determination whether those are hazardous materials. If they are, we go through a process of remediation and abatement. And if not, that we take a different action. So essentially the activities listed, I just mentioned, would all align with the National Park Service Preservation Brief 4, which is roofing for historic buildings. And then the Secretary of Interior Standards for the treatment of historic properties. In this slide, you see images of the existing roof conditions at the tower and the original Spanish clay tile roof, and the deterioration conditions of the asphalt roof and metal lined gutters, soffit deterioration below or underneath those built-in gutters, and a non-historic detached downspout that is impacting masonry below there as runoff from the downspout drains directly down the face of the building. Another portion of the work will include doors and windows. While altered to their present condition in the recent past at some time, they now are a monolithic insulated pane of glass in each one of the windows. And the original wood double hung window and the mutton character is to the inside of that glass. So it's a little bit different, and you can see that detail in those upper left pictures. The wood sills were covered at some point in the past and painted to match the windows. So in this case, our recommendations are to, again, these are found in the information that was provided in today's agenda, but specifically to the window and air infiltration issues, exterior window sill, door and transoms, the existing awnings, and then exterior paint finishes. Is to install weather stripping at the meeting style and the double hung window sashes, remove exterior non-historic metal flashing at the window sills and replace those damaged window sills in kind or repair them. Repair all the exterior paint finishes on wood painted finishes, which would be the doors, windows, crown molding, cornice soffits, brick mold and the like. Remove and replace the clear finish on the front entry door of the building, which is not seen in any of these photos. Clean and remove pigeon debris from the building exterior, which is kind of in conjunction with the work for the masonry and downspout work. And then paint and repair any finishes that are damaged on those downspouts. So in this slide, you see the images of the existing windows and some of the non-historic materials that were installed and have since failed. Up in the upper left, you see the rags that have been stuffed in at that meeting rail on the sash, and in the lower left photo, some, sorry, I'm drawing a blank on beading strip that's fallen out of that crack as well, that meeting rail. So our work again would follow the National Park Service Preservation Brief number 9 and the repair of historic windows and the Secretary of Interior Standards for the treatment of historic properties. So the third component of the activities we'd be doing is related specifically to masonry restoration and preservation issues. Our condition assessment found deteriorated mortar joints, water damage on the masonry surface, and damage and deterioration of cast in place and precast concrete materials, including the character defining mission style detailing on the towers noted in the National Register nomination. Again, our recommendations are form the foundation for the Montana Historic Preservation Grant Program application, which is in the agenda. And those specific items related to masonry activities include, again, downspouts, which we talked about, and they've been changed out over the years. So removing those non-historic materials that have since failed and returning that historic character based on the original downspouts on the building. Doing so would, some of that work would be in conjunction with the masonry repair. As you can see in these photos, the water has been leaking out of those downspouts and caused some discoloration to the surrounding masonry. So there's some repointing work and cleaning that would occur on the masonry. And that would be a chemical brick cleaning that would occur both on the vertical masonry brick and the precast concrete components at the very top of the towers, and then the board form concrete at the base of the building. Following those, we'd probably come back in. Our recommendation is to come back in with a water repellent treatment that would prevent further staining and lichen growth and keep the building cleaner and looking better longer. We'd also be looking at removal of one of the stairs there on the northeast side of the passenger building that's severely deteriorated. So we'd remove that and replace that detail in kind. And again, the work of this would be in accordance with National Preservation Brief number 1, which is assessing cleaning and water repellent treatments for historic buildings. Preservation Brief number 2, which is reporting mortar joints in historic masonry buildings. And again, the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. So one of the questions we have to address is our program budget and possible funding sources and costs of the citizens. So the budget is seen here and includes general contractors overhead and profit, general conditions, taxes, permitting fees, professional fees, bonds, and insurance. And would include at this point, there is an allowance in there for the remediation of hazardous materials that we could potentially run into on the exterior surfaces as we proceed with the work. So that number, you can see the roof and gutters, we've estimated it at $580,000. The windows budgeted at $85,000. Masonry restoration is $637,900 for a total of $1.3 million plus. Current funding sources include, I should say the current funding sources are for the entire project. However, we understand that we don't have enough money to do the entire $1.3 million of work. So the project would be phased to meet the budget restraints that are available, or the budget that becomes available. And recognizing that, we would begin with the immediate need in the project which would be the roof and the gutters and downspouts, proceed to the windows, and then directly proceed to the masonry work. And some of that is a little bit overlapped in terms of how it would come about, in terms of whether we do the gutters or the downspout restoration first, or we just do immediate repair to prevent further damage to the masonry. So there's a few things to be worked out, but in essence, the idea is the target would be to begin at the top of the building and work our way down. So begin with the roof. So possible funding sources then are the Montana Historic Preservation Grant, which the application is asking for $500,000. We put in a grant for the MJ Murdoch Charitable Trust Grant for $300,000, additional grant to the Montana History Foundation for $10,000, and the Boone and Crockett Club has budgeted $10,000. So we have a shortfall of $482,900. So our original project would be less, that $1.3 million less the $482,900. And then just to reiterate, as we proceed with this project, the intention is that there would be no costs that would be incurred by the citizens of Missoula as a result of the work of this project. So the National Register listed depot, Boone and Crockett Club building has undergone multiple changes over the years. Some of you may recall a time when it was a restaurant before becoming the office building it is today. Each time the building changed, it went through some use and improvements were made, finishes were altered, historic materials were replaced. In some cases, they were replaced with budget-sensitive non-historic materials. Given the age and age of recent work, including work leading up to the Boone and Crockett Club's occupancy of the building in 1992, changes were made, and if exterior finishes and materials were tested for hazardous materials, that information is lost to us. So that's why we're going through this process to begin that environmental assessment, which again would be in lieu of an environmental impact statement. We propose that the environmental assessment for this project be 3-phase. Again, the phase 1 would be the environmental testing of the exterior finishes to determine if there are hazardous materials. Phase 2 would be based on that phase 1 information, develop drawings and specifications that meet the Montana Department of Environmental Quality requirements for permitting and remediating those materials, hazardous materials found in phase 1. And in phase 3 would be the work to go through the process, hiring a contractor to work through the process of remediation and mitigation, in compliance with the Montana Department of Environmental Quality requirements. So with that, that's it. That's my presentation. Thank you for your help, or thank you for your time and interest. Jody Bishop is here, and again, we welcome your feedback, comments, concerns, questions you may have. Thank you.
Call for comment. Thank you, Paul, very much. First of all, I'd like to say it's such an iconic and I would say beloved structure in Missoula. So, and the work you're doing is much needed, I would say.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, I'm just delighted to see that this work is being done, being a fan of the old Milwaukee Road and having worked on all the trail system that we've used the logo on for years now. It's great to see some attention actually paid to that building so that people in town will appreciate the history of it, and any improvement to it will really enhance that image. So this is great to see. And by the way, Paul, does anyone know what happened to that? I didn't realize that they had the old Milwaukee Road sign on that building at one point. That one image you showed, actually, it showed that sign. It's the first one I'd seen of that. So I wonder what happened.
That was incredible.
You'd be curious, be interesting to find out where that ended up. It's probably in a dump somewhere, but anyway.
Jody, did you have any comments you wanted to add?
Well, I'm still writing grants, so hopefully we will have more money coming in. But we just really want to do as much as we can with the resources that we can put together. And Paul has been wonderful and in helping to do all of this, and I can't thank him enough.
I have a question about material costs and availability. Is there any indication, given our current world situation and trade situation, if there will be any disruptions? Do you expect it to stay on budget pretty well, or is there any indications that the price might increase for things?
So as Amy showed us a couple of months ago, the Northern Pacific Depot has a Spanish clay tile product as well. And I was talking to the Washington Corporation facilities today, and they are proceeding with that project, and they have not seen a bump in material costs for that. So I'm hopeful that that would be the same for us. It all does depend on when we go out to bid and what the bid environment is like at that time though, so yeah.
Kathy.
I noticed in the write-up that you talked about how this would help with local trades. And I was wondering when it does go out to bid or whatnot, you might want to consider contacting the Job Corps. And I know the Job Corps office up in the Bitterroot, we've worked with their paint shop before. So that might help in terms of attracting some of the grants if you can partner with the Job Corps office, because those kids, they bring in an instructor and then a group of kids, and they train them in the trades. So it might help with a grant application.
Thank you. That's a great point to bring up. A&E has been working with general contractors in many ways and really kind of encouraging them to develop internship programs. Mm-hmm. And we actually have the 3 major companies in Missoula have begun working in that process. Okay. So that's another means that to just kind of push the next generation to become aware of the construction industry. So that's a great idea too. Thank you for that.
And if you need any of the information on Job Corps offices and contacts, they are part of the Forest Service, so just let me know.
Okay, thanks, Kathy.
Okay, barring any more comments, we'll move on, but thanks very much again, Paul and Jody. I look forward to this project moving forward, and I guess if there's anything the HPC can do in addition to this process for your grant, I would say, please let us know. Amy, do you want to introduce the next one?
Yeah, sorry, I was looking for the raise hand button. And there it is. I just also want to throw out that on the City of Missoula Historic Preservation website has all of both applications. So anyone who's listening in can click and read the applications and read the environmental appendices for those applications. And there's also contact information for both as to how to reach out and provide public comment. So on to our next.
Would you like me to start?
Sure, take it away, David.
How you doing? So I'm David Gray with DVG Architecture and Planning. I'm sorry, my camera's a little off to the side because I'm using an iPad. So I'm looking at the screen. It's just a little weird. So we have a proposal. We're doing the exact same thing that the Boone and Crockett Club is doing for the grant and collecting comments. So we don't need to go into a lot of detail probably about that. But what we're looking at doing is the Hammond Arcade and restoration work and hopefully making it a more viable building in the downtown so it is saved. We have an application, again, for those that are listening. You can go through and see the history of the building, which is pretty amazing to see, and the characters in Missoula that were involved in the preservation of this building. So the building has had quite a few owners over its lifetime. It's over 100 years old. It has had a bunch of not very well done renovations. And you can tell by page 7 is a great view of El Cazador. But in that one, you can see that all the upper windows have basically been blocked off with either aggregate panel, concrete panels, plywood, you name it. It's a little bit of everything up there. So we would like to be able to restore the fronts of this building. A lot of places were filled in, so we'd like to get the glass back. We have some very old glass. I'm not sure if it's original or not, but it is single pane glass. So we do have some problems with condensation and ice and that kind of thing forming on the inside of the glass and creating additional damage. So we'd like to get some more efficient glazing in the building that's also historically sensitive. The masonry is what is in very rough shape. And I'm going to try to share my screen, so just bear with me for a minute. Okay. So is the screen being shared?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello? Okay. So these are pictures that I just went out today because I didn't think our application would give the HBC enough information. But just from the street level, the really beautiful facade, Art Deco facade that's on this building, it has had quite a few signs and not much maintenance done with it over the years. Nick Karras and his partner, Karras Properties, purchased the building a few years ago. And so now they are trying to bring the building back up into its former glory. Just some of the pictures that I'll show you, you can see there was various signs or holes anyway drilled into the masonry to hold up the signs. There's pointing that needs to be done on some of the parapets that actually face the Florence building, which is this one. You can actually see daylight through the 8-inch thick masonry wall in places. There's quite a few holes for water infiltration. There's no metal copings on the top. They just have a masonry, and that hasn't really been maintained over the years. And so through the years of weathering, the water is now getting into the brick walls, and it's starting to break out the pointing and breaking out the brick. We've actually lost some parapet. This is an example of some of the front wall parapet where the brick is gone now. So that would have to be repaired and replaced, but that's happening in multiple places around the facade. Here's another view. This one storefront happens to still have some glass in it, but you know, they just have a standard window air conditioner just cut into it. So my guess it's probably plexiglass. And there's a bunch of other, in the other renovations that occurred on this building, there's quite a bit of mechanical. They just sort of stuck over the awnings. The awnings themselves are in very poor shape. And if you've ever walked underneath them in a rainstorm, it rains under the awning as well as on top of the awning. So there is replacement of the awning over the entranceways, the removal of this awning, and then some previous work that you had approved already for the awnings. So in the back lower level of the building, it's a concrete frame with masonry infill. This was filled in at some other time. There's where the CMU block is on this picture. That's maybe an old door or window hole. They had previous approval from the HPC to remove this brick infill to have some additional storefront. There's like a door being put in here. So they'd like to be able to move forward with that. The basement of this building for the most part is not used. This is kind of a picture just inside that last picture. This is one of the few places there's actually plaster, but it's in terrible shape. It's broken, falling apart. There's sort of some stone that's mortared over down below, brick above, and then there's another concrete wall or a brick wall on the outside of this backing it up. So we'd like to clean this all off to the brick for future tenants to come in. The basement is a giant hollow shell. So this is a place for potential future development to make the building much more viable. So I just wanted to let you see that. I know you're a bunch of curious people and you like historic buildings, so I provided some of this. The building has a 4-inch water main that comes into the building, but it was never given or never had a sprinkler system installed. I'm going to change screens here for a minute. Supposedly that's stopped casting. There we are. So the building never had a fire sprinkler put into the basement, and that is really harming the building to be more financially viable. The basement is required to have a fire sprinkler system and a fire alarm system then throughout the building. So nothing can really be done with the basement right now that's a new use, because it would trip a requirement for a fire sprinkler system. So as part of the grant, they put in their budget to actually put in a new fire sprinkler system, fire alarm system, which would make the whole lower level a viable business space. And it is mostly vacant right now, unless you've been down to the pop-up museum, which is down there. It's a fantastic place to see the history of Missoula. But generally the things they're trying to cover with the grant, they have masonry restoration, which we have to do on all sides. I showed you some of that. The storefront windows. So there is a little bit of everything in this building. There's some places where there are wood framed in windows and then a metal window. So we'd like to get in a matching window, historically sensitive, of course. There are skylights when you go into the arcade. There's an L-shaped hallway and then businesses on both sides. The skylights are basically covered over in the hallway, so you can't really see them. They're very old older version of the skylight. So those that would need to be upgraded, the doors and hardware, and then putting in some money for new windows. We're very similar to what would happen with the Boone and Crockett Club. For as far as the environmental evaluations, we would have to do testing of the materials that were to be disturbed. Anything we found in there, if we found asbestos, lead paint, something like that, then we would have to go into the process of planning how to deal with that, and then following that, the actual mitigation of that. So the building itself, from the application, it's not the highest rent building in the downtown. So previous owners have had a hard time keeping up with the maintenance on the building. And so this grant plus some matching grant funds would really make it possible for the restoration of this building. It's in a key corner of the downtown. And I would hate to see this building fall into disrepair, just so we don't have what's happened in some other buildings in the downtown. I'll leave it at that. It's a cherished building. So are there any questions?
Thanks, David. Do you have the budget with
Yes.
that application?
Click on back. So it is Appendix A, which is on page 22 of the application. And so the total budget is $744.702 with the Montana Historic grant for $496, $400,096. Okay, I'm gonna try to say this again. $496,492. There's some matching funds for $248,210 for a total project budget of $744,702.
Thanks. Any questions? Comments?
It's just really nice to see both of these buildings getting some attention. I'm really excited about both projects. Thank you.
Yeah, Jody, I appreciate your information about the Job Corps. I'll pass that along to other jobs. It'll be pertinent to this one, but I think that'll be helpful with other jobs as well. I appreciate that.
I think it'll be nice too. I know I used to walk down Front Street all the time and to work, and the water that would come off of that awning.
It rains as hard under that awning in places as it does above the awning.
Yeah, very odd.
But I've always enjoyed the awnings, but they have been needing a lot of love for a long time. And so this would help to address some of that. We would be doing it at the entryways, wouldn't be everywhere.
Is El Cazador moving out of there?
Not that I have heard of.
Oh, okay.
Oh, El Cazador is trying to open a Southside branch.
Oh, okay.
A different Mexican restaurant on South Avenue. So they're working on opening up a second restaurant down there.
Oh, okay. Misunderstood.
That's all I've heard anyway. So I hope they don't move. That's my favorite food in downtown. So any more questions?
All right. Well, thanks very much, David. I appreciate all your work and for your continued support of historic preservation in Missoula and keeping downtown Missoula awesome.
Yeah.
And I think seeing these projects and just demonstrating care and the value of them is so important, especially these days. So thank you.
The last one, I think the radio building / union block is a good example of the care that this owner is putting into the buildings that he's investing into. So it would just be wonderful to see that same level of restoration on the Hammond Arcade. It really needs it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for your time.
All right. You have a nice evening.
Thanks. Oh, and I guess along the same thing, if we can make public comment or any additional.
Yeah, any public comments should be able to come back to my office. My contact information is in the application. And we'd like to get it back by June 10th, so we have enough time to incorporate the comments into the final application.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Jamie?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment as the newest member on the commission. It's really interesting for me to read through the materials and get further insight on Missoula history. And so having that record available for us to look at and understand and appreciate all the events that have taken place for each of these buildings is really awesome.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, for reminding us of that. Thanks so much. Okay, my agenda has the Radio Central building restoration update, but that has been postponed. So Emmy's going to provide an update on the Historic Preservation and Legacy Business Awards.
Yeah, so we finally, we got it all together. COVID struck right when we were starting to talk about all this. So I appreciate sticking to and voting and asking questions and just still communicating. That's been awesome. Our final list is for the Legacy Business Awards. We have Warden's Market downtown, Benson's Farm, and Mountain Press Publishing. And then for the Preservation Awards, we have the Missoula County Courthouse. So that's not, they won an award for the Paxton murals a couple years back, but this is actually for the restoration of the building. And then Missoula County, the culinary and commercial building and the restoration they did for that. Then we have the United States Forest Service Building 26, which is at Fort Missoula for their Region 1 headquarters, and the adaptive reuse that was done for that building, as well as 201 South 4th Street West, which is also Jennifer Anthony's building with Preserve Historic Missoula and all of the work that they've done after the fire and working on the paint restoration. So we moved along and I sent the awards actually today, got them printed, framed. Thank you, Paul, for getting the frames for those. And thank you, Jamie, for reaching out to a lot of the recipients, as well as Jim and Kathy for just helping in all of the ways. And so it took me a little while because I had the window clings published, as well as the stickers for the legacy businesses, but it was delayed due to COVID. So I just got those literally today. But we got 100 of these stickers, as well as the big window clings that they can put on their doors from the inside out. So they won't have to worry about vandalism or anything like that. And they turned out great. I'm really happy. These are the stickers. The window clings are about double the size. And I included those in the packages and sent them via UPS. So those are going out, and we alerted all of the winners via email with a letter, and everyone seemed really happy. I think it was just a nice thing for people during everything that's going on in the world. So I haven't yet released the press release, but that is my thing to do tomorrow. And I'm hoping that even though it was a little bit delayed due to COVID, the Missoulian will still pick this up and want to do a story on all of the recipients. So that is our awards update. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thanks so much, Emmy, for all of your work on this and keeping it moving. And I hope it's been rewarding for you too.
It's been awesome. It's so worth it. And it's been really cool. I'm really glad that we decided to move forward via virtual voting and sending through the mail. I think it really lifted a lot of people's spirits, and I'm hoping that once I get the press release out, it could be a really good story for Missoula right now.
I know the Forest Service was pretty happy with theirs. So I have heard a little bit about it. So thank you. That it was a nice thing for the Forest Service.
Thank you.
I'm going to pause here for just a sec. We had someone else join us, 406-550-3662. Do you want to, do you have any comments or? And can you identify yourself?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Jody again. I had to jump off.
Oh, okay.
It brought me back in a different way. I don't know why.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks for coming back, Jody.
No problem.
Sorry, just one question on the preservation awards for Emmy or anyone else. You know, having seen those, and you understand the depth and the effort that people go through to pull the information together for both the legacy awards and the building awards, architecture awards. There's a lot of time spent there and a lot of information, and I understand it's really valuable to have as a collected document. But just a question, if that is for the average person who isn't, you know, preservation maybe savvy or whatever, is that a burden to them? In anybody's mind, or can that be simplified to make that application process slightly more friendly to a novice?
That's an excellent question. I know I had pushback from a business owner who had been on our list too, with a legacy business. And the response was that we're the Historic Preservation Commission, we should have all that information already. So even, yeah, less onerous, or find some way to work with the owners or the other recipients to help them complete that, even if it's students or.
I think that's a great point, Paul. And even switching to doing it digitally was one step we are trying to do to make it less onerous. And we can reevaluate the questions that we are asking next year, because it's been interesting to receive the nominations and to go through nominations in the past, because the past nominations have been incredibly thorough, but they've also been nominated by the same people over and over. And I would like to see that change. I was hoping that switching it to a digital format would be more conducive to people being able to apply. And it looks like it's not, because again, we're getting the same people who are writing the most thorough, amazing nominations ever. But I wouldn't want to see that set someone back who would want to nominate, you know? And I guess in my mind, we're not nominating someone for a National Register, you know, but I think when historians nominate, we, you know, and we go to that length, but we're not, I think in the past, maybe it seemed like we needed that, but I don't feel like we do. So somehow I think you're spot on. We need to make it more approachable to people who aren't historians or architects who feel like they can approach this and nominate their neighbor next door or something like that.
And yeah, and I guess, you know, we have our local listing for more thorough work and just to recognize those people who are trying. I thought Beth Judy's was awesome, just to do all that work way ahead of time. And, you know, maybe that's something too that can be on the website of, you know, an invitation or, you know, to let people know that their stories are valuable and to start them today, not 6 weeks before it's due or something.
Which, that's a really good point, Jamie. Putting all of this on the website is something I've been meaning to do, and I need to do that. And because the amount of information that is submitted is truly significant. So I'll add that to my list. That's a really good point.
I know the list is always bigger. Ken, did you have?
Yeah,
we should definitely do that. Like, I want people to see the amount of effort that has gone into these nominations, and I don't feel like we've shown that in any way. You know, an award or a write-up doesn't show the amount of effort that someone took to nominate these places.
So Amy, I'm sure you've been in touch with Linda McCarthy in terms of using, you know, being the executive director for them. But I always have to stop and think, it's a downtown Missoula partnership now. It used to be all just MDA in terms of getting the word out on these and maybe working with her and summarizing what we've already gotten in a format that the press and media are more likely to carry than all of the detail that's in there now. Being having edited newsletters and everything myself, I understand it's hard to do that, but it needs to be done. And if there's a way to do that, I'm sure Linda would be all over it if you, and I'm sure you're already in touch with her on many ways. So yeah.
That's a really good point, Kent. So we haven't morphed, and I'll get into this with my staff report because now there's the Heritage Missoula group, which is based out of the MDA, but we haven't yet morphed the HPC awards with that. So HPC awards have always lived with the city. Whether we want to bring our awards to the Heritage Missoula group is something that we can talk about. And I think that's a really good point. Which is done by the MDA Foundation. So they run Heritage Missoula.
Any more comments? Okay, we'll move on to the Building Watch. I just saw one, it's a house. It's not significant, but it's I think it represents some of the character off of more of our Orchard Homes. It's not quite Orchard Homes yet, but on 3rd Street where the Coca-Cola bottling company or plant was. And I think it's owned by Jensen's. And it just stands out, and with all of the changes that are going on that West 3rd area, the nature and character of that street will change, or already has changed a long time ago, but just a reminder.
So I have one. I'm on a cemetery board, Missoula City Cemetery Board, and we went through a strategic planning process, or are in the process of going through a strategic planning process. And a couple of things have been called out in that process that the board hadn't considered before. and one of them would be an alteration of the historic cemetery. The board voted on, we put together a list of comments and whatnot, and that information is going back to the consultant that was hired to provide that report. The whole report isn't public information yet, but it will be, and it's coming. And I just want to put it out there that there is I'm not sure what the logic there is, or if there's a push to do that happen, but there is a suggestion that the cemetery make some major alterations. And right now, I believe that the majority of the board, everyone on the board for that matter, at the cemetery is opposed to those alterations, simply because I think ultimately our goal is to have the historic portion of the cemetery listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So just put that out there for everyone's attention. And if you hear anything about that in the public as it comes out, please voice your opinions as well.
Well, we've worked together for the cemetery master plan. Just remind me, because that was a while ago, was the cemetery board, are they interested in listing the cemetery?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, cool.
I've reached out to Preserve Historic Missoula to see if there was a possibility of developing that. You know, the cemetery keeps amazing historic records, so they have some, I mean, it's absolutely, their files are just absolutely amazing, you know, the information that they have over there. So I think it'd be relatively easy to put something together, but it's still a process. So.
Paul, is Doug Waters still around?
He is not the sexton, no.
He is the sexton?
No, he is not.
Okay, is he still in town? Do you know?
I do not know, no.
Because of course he was head for a while and know a lot of information, but okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, that could be a good graduate historian intern to put that together for the National Register. Of course, with my help, I mean, I would be happy to take that on, but that could be a cool internship too, if they're interested in that, of doing internships.
I think it's worth pursuing. I think there's definitely strong interest, both on the staff side at the cemetery and from the board to move forward. I think the only thing was just, you know, the process, you know, the time that would take to actually do that.
Yeah, well, I think the Historic Preservation Office, I mean, we would love, I wasn't ever really given the okay go before, but if you want to make that okay go happen on the board, we could work.
Okay. Right. Make that happen. I'll see what I can do from my end.
Okay.
I think it'd be a great, another notch in the Missoula list of National Register listed properties as well. That would be a pretty significant one.
Do we as a board need to make a motion to get that going?
No, so any National Register is owner initiated.
Okay.
Kathy, did you have a comment?
I drove down. Do you know the plumber and pipe fitters building? We'd been talking about that little brick building that was there. Yeah, it's not there. I was just surprised, but I mean, we all knew it was in really bad shape.
Yeah, it's a neat pile of bricks now.
Yeah, it's just a parking lot.
Thanks for the I guess thanks for the update.
Yeah, it's not something I wanted to see, but I know we had talked about it, and I guess it's just a reminder to myself that if I see something, maybe I should say something rather than go, oh, look at that.
So I went and I did a full documentation before it came down. I think I told you guys I would send you photos, and I never did. So I just wrote it on, and I know I do this all the time and you guys are probably frustrated with me that I will do this. I'll send you the photos before it was taken down. So it is documented at least before it came down. Yeah. And then I actually have one too. And this is just hearsay. So it's on the record because this is all on the record, but hearsay, not through the city, that 322 Levasseur is rumored to be taken down, which is the blue house near the park.
What was the address again?
322 Levasseur. It's
the old Shelton house.
Yes, the old Shelton house. Yeah.
It is down, or it's being taken down?
The rumor is that it will be taken down soon. And public record shows that Tom Winter is the owner.
He's running for House of Representatives?
Yes, he is.
All right.
Yeah, and he lost out, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was running, but yeah. Mm-hmm. So just, that's my building watch to
It's
share.
worth noting that, the changes that have taken place on that particular street have been pretty significant over there, that really pretty major impacts.
And what's challenging is we actually reached out to see if it would be listable, and SHPO said it's not listable due to its deterioration. We can try again, but that's the status on it.
Yeah, I noticed that both of those properties are for sale. So yeah, as you pointed out, Paul, there's been a lot of changes there. And just FYI, you all may know this, but the North River Parks and Trails master planning process has been underway. And one of the things that those of us working on that are hoping to see happen is that the pathway will be able to eventually go through there instead of having detour completely around. And so it's one of those kind of things that's going to be down the road a bit. There's talk that maybe the other property owners in there on the riverside may be more amenable to something like that happening, but it's nevertheless sort of in line to happen at some point to make that connection more directly instead of having to detour all the way around.
Thanks, Kent.
And just for an aside, Philip Megling is one of the property owners 2 houses down. So he could be someone to talk to you about it as well.
Well, and he has the heritage American elm tree in that backyard. Steve will remember when that came up before the design review board. that property adjacent is now developed into the condos. But yeah, that was one of the things that came up in the course of that meeting, is the fact that there's a huge American elm tree in the backyard of Philip's house there.
Anyone else? Okay, then we're on to the Historic Preservation Officer staff report and project notification.
Well, so I'll try and make this quick. We, shortly after our last HPC meeting, much like I think a lot of you, started working from home. And meetings were kind of subsided, and a lot of development has kind of gone on hiatus because of that. But I'll just walk through my updates for you all. Adaptive reuse, we were talking about 508 South 3rd Street West. That was the old Thornton Hospital. They were very close to submitting their rezoning application, and then COVID hit and they're having to reevaluate due to economic reasons. 903 South First Street is moving forward. So that's the old fur and such factory. It was Bissinger & Co. They submitted their rezoning application, but because the government couldn't hold meetings for 2.5 months, all of those rezonings before them are now in line. So they're after that. So it's probably going to be a couple months. But they are planning on giving an informational presentation to us in the meantime about their plans for the site, just to make sure that they are on par with the Secretary of Interior standards. And they don't want to get too far along with their architectural designs before we can see what they're doing, because we will be in charge of the design moving forward. I was going to present at the National Trust Main Street Conference on the Adaptive Reuse Ordinance with Jim Lindbergh, who's the policy director for the National Trust. But that was canceled, unfortunately, because that was in May. But hopefully we can do it again next year. The Montana Association of Planners, the MAP conference, is happening still tentatively in Missoula this year in September. So we've been asked to do a tour of adaptive reuse buildings, which I think is great, in Missoula, as well as 2 sessions on heritage programming and adaptive reuse policy. Heritage Missoula has actually gone quite a ways, because it's kind of something that you can do remotely anyway. Our logo has been finalized due to A&E Architects. Thank you very, very, very much. And I included that at the end of the staff report, so you can scroll through and see that. And it actually is a manual about the branding and what the branding means. And again, Heritage Missoula is our umbrella group for Unseen Missoula, Historic Preservation, Arts Councils, food, music. It's kind of everything that has to do with heritage of downtown. We have partnerships of everyone involved. So that's really coming to form. We as a group, or the main people of the group, myself, Kalina of MDA, Alan Newell of the foundation, and Matt Lotzenhauser of the county, presented to the Committee of the Whole, City Council Committee of the Whole yesterday. And we received a unanimous vote to adopt the plan that was written, the Downtown Heritage Interpretation Plan. And that'll be officiated on Monday of City Council meeting. We're also going to present on Monday to the county commissioners for their own county resolution of support, which hopefully, and I don't see why not, would be adopted, hopefully unanimously. We're still working on those 13 banners for the Higgins Bridge to bring awareness to the program. We started this before COVID, and it's kind of slowed down, but I think we can still get it up, hopefully. And it's in partnership with the Lee Nye's Eddie's Club collection for their new book. So we have the designs that will be Heritage Missoula, and then portraits of the Lee Nye new book. And then Jamie wrote a letter of support for this in lieu of grant funding to get those banners up and running. The MDA, I think I mentioned last time actually we met, received a $10,000 grant from the Department of Commerce for wayfinding to follow the Downtown Heritage Interpretive Plan. Since then, we did secure an intern, and she's been working diligently. She's doing everything for the banners. Her name is Kelly Boma. And we've started work on actually casting a bronze heritage medallion following the Heritage Trail to be placed in front of the new library in the sidewalk. And that should be placed in the next month. Unseen Missoula is tentatively planning on resuming tours the end of June, but we'll see. But as of right now, we do have 2 new stops, including the Union Club and Cranky Sam's, which is pretty cool. I advise everyone to go there and see the Hidden Lady. Missoula County, I met with Chet, who's the head of county planning, and he reached out to me to just broadening our HPC to include the county and what that would look like, what those steps would be, and what that funding would be. That was a lengthy conversation, and I think due to their rezoning work that they're really diligently working on, they're looking into that in a very serious way. So we might.
I'm sorry, did everyone catch that? There was a sort of a gap.
Oh, sorry.
No, maybe it was just me on this end.
No, it wasn't just you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I met with Chet Krauser, who's the head of county planning. And he reached out to me to talk about the possibility of either creating a CLG for the county, HBC, or broadening our boundaries to include the county. And so we talked about those steps and what that would entail. I did make it clear, I know that our previous HPO back when Philip was here did city and county, but since then I think we've grown a lot and there's been a lot of responsibilities, a lot of less staff in the city. So staff is having to do a lot more than when our previous program was held. So I did say absolutely, unless but we have to hire someone else. We do. And we need more funding too. There's just no other way. So that was a very honest and how we do that. Yeah, Steve.
Are there any political ramifications? Because the last big move kind of separated the city from the county. If we're thinking about uniting city and county in one preservation group, is this a political consideration as well as?
It would be, and so Chet is in charge. He's the director of planning for the county, and he reached out to me. And so nothing is gonna happen. It was more just initial, how could we even start this conversation to make it happen? Okay. So I would assume there would be, but I also want to let you guys know that it's really kind of awesome that they're even thinking about that and reaching out to us, that we could potentially broaden our boundaries. I don't see it happening soon, especially due to COVID funding and all of that, but they're thinking about it. And I think that is entirely because of the consultant that they hired to evaluate their zoning and what Missoula County is lacking right now. And one thing is historic preservation.
I was just wondering, if we're a city board, we would need special dispensation from the city government, I guess, to broaden our scope.
And it's possible with the county parameters of government, they wouldn't even be able to PC, which might be, and he's going to look into that, why we were originally one of city and county. But if that is the case, then they would have to provide us with a little bit more funding, which was taken away when we did split, and some more staff help too, which could be really exciting to have more staff help and more funding moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it was easier to expand our scope when the city and county worked together, had a united planning department. Mm-hmm. Now that seems a little more difficult. But, well, let's shoot for it. See what can happen.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was, I don't know, it's cool that the head of CAPS reached out and wanted to talk about that. Okay. We're still talking about preservation of Love on Ranch, but it did have to do a hiatus during COVID, as did a lot of things. Commissioner Strohmeyer is still charging that group. And he's still been checking in frequently and letting us know that he hasn't forgotten about it, and we're still working towards that. The Documenting COVID-19 in Missoula County, a community archive project, is been a really interesting thing lately that Commissioner Strohmeyer actually put together initially, and it's a multitude of agencies that have partnered. So from the hospitals to the schools, to city government, county government, nonprofits, community organizations, artists, writers, videographers who are part of this group to be a collective for how COVID-19 has affected our county, city and county, everything as a whole, and to document our response as a whole to COVID-19, whether bad or good. How the community and government has responded to that, because this is such a brand kind of new thing in this day and age that we've ever dealt with, that it's going to be archived with the University of Montana for interviews, memos, newspapers, school documents to move forward, so that, you know, in how many years people can have a collective archive on COVID-19 in Missoula County. So that's been a really cool thing to interact with. And I included the link there for everyone to participate with. 4th Street condos, per the right-of-way conditions for the condo development, no interested parties ever stepped up to move the existing structures before the deadline. So that means that we will follow the appendix of the mitigation to conform to documentation, interpretive signage, integration of original materials and features into the new design, and deconstruction of existing structures. I talked to them, I'm the point person for that, back in March, and I haven't heard from them since, but I do legally have to hear from them to move forward. I haven't reached out to anyone, but I'm wondering if maybe COVID kind of slowed things down in that development, but that's just my own thinking. The Mullen Area Master Plan public outreach was converted to virtual interactive open houses. Originally, it was going to be actual physical open houses last time we talked. And then summaries of this exhaustive work can be found, and I included the links there. And I actually worked with Dover Cole pretty closely on the history of that area and Hellgate, and incorporating that in some way into the new development, whether it be through interpretive signage or statues or parks, even down to architecture and Montana style architecture, making sure that we don't have, you know, another sawmill district on our hands where we're not living in Mediterranean anywhere and we're actually living in Montana. The preservation objectives portfolio. When I have downtime, I've been working on actually initiating the next steps for our historic preservation program. And I'm calling this the Preservation Objectives Portfolio. I've been compiling all of the existing recommendations through our existing plans into one area. Researching how to go about historic.
Oh, Emmy, there's a gap again.
Oh shoot, I'm sorry. Okay, so the Preservation Objectives Portfolio is just kind of my thing that I started during COVID of all of the research that I could possibly do on how to progress this program. And that's through creating a list of all of our existing recommendations through our existing city plans, comparing and contrasting our city to other cities in Montana. So Bozeman's character overlay, Butte's local register, how we can legally create a local register, because there are legal parameters for that within the state of Montana, which is different than a lot of other states. Preservation planning, because we haven't updated our preservation plan since 1990. And so I downloaded about 6 close preservation plans, including Eugene, Bellingham, Boulder, Spokane, and they vary of the closeness, but it's also hard to compare because we're in Montana and there's nothing really comparable in Montana. So we have to leave the state as to what, if we're moving forward, we have to leave the state. Other initiatives for adaptive reuse, preservation easements, and funding initiatives, including tax infrastructure. So since then, we've compiled a localized city council steering committee, which is Brian Von Lossberg, Jordan Hess, and Gwen Jones. And we've met twice about this preservation portfolio objectives that I'm putting together about how we can move forward in Missoula and what can be attainable and plan next steps for the program with city council approval. So that's actually been really, really cool to meet with council people and have that dialogue started as to we need to move forward here. University of Montana is planning on replacing the brick pathways which extend off the oval and replace the brick with stamped concrete in order to make the existing paths ADA accessible. This brick was originally from Higgins and Railroad Street, but it was put actually in the UM pathways in the 1970s.
Kathy has a question here.
So I understand the ADA stuff. I understand that, but what are their plans for the bricks then?
That's a great question. Jim and I actually, Jim McDonald and I were there. We met with them and I really tried to get the city to take the brick. The issue is we already have a lot of the brick from Phillips days. So we have pallets of brick already. And the way that the university was doing it was a little challenging, where they weren't really willing to separate individual sections of brick. It was either one whole pathway,
right, or
nothing. And the city didn't, we can't take that on because we already have that brick. But I really pressed that they reach out to Home Resource.
Okay.
Jim, did you hear anything further?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, they're going to do that. They're trying to figure out where to, they're essentially taking about 70% of the brick probably to either Home Resource or some of there as part of the contract now. So now somebody, and the whole thing is whether people in the community can buy it, or we want to see if we can at least come up with maybe 10 or 12 pallets of about 400 bricks each but it's going to take some people going out there and kind of collecting them and putting it all together. So that hasn't quite worked out yet, but they've decided not to just send them to the dump. They're going to actually put them somewhere where they can recycle, somebody can recycle them, probably through Home Resource.
That's wonderful, Jim. I would be happy to be looped back into those conversations. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, Philip was the one that kind of worked that out with them. So, but anyway, but it's still ongoing. The contract will start, I think, in another week or two, and we'll have a little more idea, I think, what's going on. But, yeah.
Steve, did you have a comment?
No, I think you covered it really. I had a discussion with Philip about it, and Philip said he was trying to convince the city to take it. and basically have it in reserve as a resource. But it sounds like you've had a more recent discussion than I have, so.
Yeah,
Well, I think
that was a few weeks ago and that kind of all went away, so.
Yeah, and we already have so many bricks as a resource from the Phillip days, which I actually went out and visited, and it's quite overgrown. So I'm thinking a workshop maybe next May where we can actually go and evaluate the bricks that we have in the city yards from the Phillip days would be great.
Paul?
I'm going to have to, excuse me, I'm going to have to drop off here. The people are here for the maintenance and they're asking me all sorts of questions. So I'm going to have to drop off here. So thank you, everyone. Good presentations. Thanks, Emmy, for all your work. And it's great. So see you next time.
Thanks, Jim.
Jim.
Bye. Just a question in terms of their schedule for that work, then they haven't suggested it's immediate, but it is pending in the near future or some, like, did they give you any idea when they're going to do it? University, that is.
Yeah, they've been really challenging to work with. They haven't really said, and they've said it's immediate. And then they said, oh, we have 2 weeks. And they said, I need to know by tomorrow. And then they said, oh, we have 2 weeks. So this has been a really challenging thing with the bricks.
I just think of some of the projects I'm working on, and it'd be interesting, particularly the fairgrounds projects. It'd be interesting to at least throw that out there as a potential paving material and see if it gets any legs on it.
That's a fascinating idea. So whether the county would be interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Emmy, who's been your principal contact at the university?
Sorry, what was that, Kent?
Yeah, who's been your contact person at the university?
It's been Kevin and Brad.
Oh, mm-hmm. Was it Kevin Krebsbach?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Brad, I don't remember, is Brad Badenoch?
Yeah.
He's
Kevin.
Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin's the head of the facilities division, so.
Yeah, and originally the plan was they were actually going to haul it all to the dump. Oh. And we raised a ruckus, and so been a thorn in their back, and the city can't take all of the brick. It's an obscene amount of brick, and they're not willing to separate the brick. But I'm really glad to hear that 70% of it is going to home resource, according to Jim. That's wonderful. And that's a really, really good idea, Paul, about reaching out to the county as to whether they have warehouses that they could house some of the brick too, even at the fairgrounds. That's great.
Yeah, maybe it's just a question for Dave Strohmeyer.
Mm-hmm. I'll ask him tomorrow. Okay, moving forward, SHPO finished the final grant report, and that was completed, submitted the end of April. So this marks our new fiscal year for our grant funding. I'm happy to spread this report along. Just send me an email if you would like to read that. Happy to. City fiscal year ends in July. I have a meeting with admin. And this year will be different due to COVID. We didn't spend nearly as much on our awards. So I'm gonna make a plug that we keep that because naturally we couldn't use it. The MAM conference was supposed to happen in Missoula in March, and that was canceled. I was supposed to present with Kate Hampton on Unseen Missoula and heritage interpretation, but I'm hoping that will happen next year. Historic preservation permits, both the historic preservation permits for the Historical Museum, Locomotive Shed, and the Higgins Block masonry were passed using the expedited format since we were doing this virtually. We discussed this earlier, but the HPC vacancies, we still have those vacancies. We are at the end of the list because we've been making quorum. So a lot of other boards are actually in the same situation we are. We, like I said, have just been showing up. So we're not at the top of the line, which is great. And I'm really happy that we have been. We put out job applications for the 2020 Summer Moon Randolph Historic Preservation intern, but we put those out in March to end of April. And naturally we didn't get any applicants. That was right during circumstances. So we're just gonna save that stipend that we worked into the parks budget and re-advertise for next summer. Rattlesnake Dam removal of non-historic buildings has commenced, but once removal of historic buildings and structures as taken by the Section 106 mitigation report, once that happens, we're going to get documentation of the actual removal of those because that is necessary for our 106 mitigation. So that's my very quick overview of the past couple months. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Emmy. It's comforting that so much work is continuing and moving forward. My only question is in reference to the public history that's including COVID, but if that can't be augmented to also include the protests and the racial strife that's going on as well.
Yeah, so I've been thinking the same thing, Jamie, like it's, you know, historically speaking, it's kind of melded into, in terms of a timeline, inseparable. We haven't discussed that, but we do have a meeting next week. And I'll put that in my notes to bring that up because I think that's a really good point.
Okay, Paul, I think had his hand up.
Yeah, just on a different topic, the preservation objective portfolio. You know, I'm totally on board. I love the idea of updating the preservation plan. I think we talked about that in the past. It's pretty out of date document. I don't think it represents who we are any longer. Is that forms, as that moves forward, I'd love to be a participant.
Okay.
Please include me in or.
Me too.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same exact thing that Paul just did. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this, Emmy.
That's great. Yeah. Okay. Adding it to my notes.
I think you had Steve too. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah.
And Steve. Okay.
Did we just make an instant subcommittee?
Strong work. You didn't even have to be asked. That's awesome.
If you guys want, you can make it official, but we could also wait. And I can share with you all the work that I've done, and maybe next month if you want to make it official.
Do we need to make a motion for that? I mean, for next month?
For next month, we would.
Okay.
If it's something that we need to vote on, it needs to be on the agenda and advertised ahead of time. So if making a subcommittee is an official action, it needs to be publicly available and known before the meeting.
So would you guys like for me to put that on the agenda for next time?
Sounds like.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was gonna say on the documenting the COVID experience, has anybody gotten items or articles donated yet?
Yeah, so it's being received through the University of Montana through the archives.
All right.
And they have so far, but it hasn't been a lot. I think it's been under 20 so far.
Just for a little colorful story, I ran into a fellow who during the toilet paper shortage, actually ordered toilet paper online from China, and 10 rolls of toilet paper showed up in a package in miniature, 10 rolls of toilet paper that fit inside his mailbox. And he was greatly humored by it. He's kept it, he hasn't opened it up, and I encouraged him to donate it. He said the rolls were, you know, this big around and about that tall. So
that's incredible. And we're taking donations. So that
yeah.
link that I have on the agenda is where you can donate everything like that.
Awesome, great.
Yeah.
I can tell him it's real.
Uh-huh.
So go ahead and donate.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay, board member comments. And I'm going to start here and just mention, and just to keep it, I mean, I think for those of you folks who are working in the professional arena, that you probably always do keep it mindful, but that, you know, historic preservation does have some problematic racial implications. And, you know, that we keep that in mind. And, you know, I'm not sure what to do about it, but just, I guess, just to be aware and to be thinking about it.
Jamie, I think that's a great thing to make an observation of. A few years ago, I did a presentation on Native American architecture in Montana to the at the Montana History Conference. And it was during that process you really were kind of eye-opening in terms of from an architect's perspective of the built environment and how that has shaped or not allowed the reservations to shape themselves. So I absolutely agree with that and support that idea. Diversity of culture, and you know, it's not always we've seen this in National Register nominations, kind of shifting away from what has typically been an investigation of the architect and architecture and a homeowner to a sense of place and what happened there and the people who were there, the people who worked in that house, perhaps. You know, so there is that shift nationally, and yes, thank you for bringing that up. So good call.
Steve, did you have a comment? I guess, yeah, I don't know. I remember about 20 years ago, I was at a meeting, a political meeting, and mentioned, you know, racism, and there's still, you know, a lot of blindness to it. And, you know, the comment was, there's no racism in Missoula. The neighborhood I live in, Lewis and Clark area, was a whites only neighborhood. And apparently it's still on the covenants, and that is probably something that should come off. And the development was in it started in the 1960s. Our house is 63. So it actually is it crossed that 50-year threshold a couple of years ago.
Curious, I know there are neighborhoods in the South Hills that are explicitly state in using the N-word in their statements of who can and can't live in a neighborhood.
In the covenants?
In the original covenants up there, yeah.
Holy cow.
Oh, I don't know if you need to change covenants, because when the Supreme Court struck those things down as illegal and unconstitutional, I think they were automatically rendered ineffective. I mean, strictly legally speaking, it'd sure be nice to just clean it up and make sure it never happens again. But I think it might be more of a symbolic gesture than a legal necessity.
I think even just to highlight that, I don't know, I mean, it would be hard. It'd be a very difficult thing to have a community discussion about. Huh?
Even the symbolic nature of saying we're aware of this and we know it's wrong. So
that might have some value
mhm.
to actually state it. So.
A lot of organizations, I don't know, I'll look into it if you're interested. I don't know if city boards are allowed to do this, but putting out a statement. I know the National Trust for Historic Preservation put out a statement. If that's something you guys as HBC are interested in, I'd be happy to look into the legality of that.
Those statements are very hard to do and get them right.
And it might take a little discussion and definitely some forethought, because it's kind of similar to how you take on the Japanese internment camp issue.
Good point.
It's, you know, solidly a part of our history, not a good or acceptable part, but it happened. So.
It's also challenging as, like, we are policymakers. I mean, we're quasi-judicial. It's, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'd be, maybe that's something for Preserve Historic Missoula. Maybe that's more in their vote.
Or our statement could be that we're aware of some of the ordinances in Missoula, and we would appreciate it if the city council and the mayor would work to strike that from the books. And that could be our statement, because that's something that we're aware of. And that might work better for us.
To be aware of kind of historic statements that should be updated as a gesture.
Right.
I wonder as well if there could be some outreach to the Historical Museum at Fort Missoula, where they could actually do some sort of a display, you know, that accounts for that and acknowledges that it happened, even in our own community, that those things happened, and how we moved beyond them, or haven't in some ways.
Yeah, it reminds me of, we had the presentation on the Methodist Church, which was fascinating, and how no one knew any of that history. I didn't know any of that history before that came to light. I mean, that could just be something that somehow maybe historic, you know, the fort could turn into a story or something like that, because they have the ability to, through their website and through an actual physical space. Yeah.
Sorry, Kathy or Steve, did you have?
One thing that you probably all have noticed if you've gone to any university athletic events until the COVID thing set in is their recognition finally of the fact that we are occupying the traditional lands of the Salish. And they do that at the beginning of every athletic event now. And I think that's at least a nod of the fact that we are occupying historic territory that was part of the indigenous homeland. And I think as long as we're aware of that, that's helpful. But I think the ideas that have been expressed so far about getting rid of any language that exists now about segregation of neighborhoods is something to think about and work on.
A great point. Thank you, Kat.
I think it's it's an ongoing opportunity to learn and to listen. So, anybody else? Well, it was wonderful to see you all. Emmy, you've done, like I said, it's just so much work, and thank you for keeping everyone on track. And I guess thank you to our City of Missoula staff too. And thank you for Jody and David and Paul for your presentations. And do we need to have a move? Oh, Emmy?
Sorry, staff reached out and they wanted to apologize. They are having problems technologically. So thank you, Jamie, on behalf of them for taking roll.
Hang in there, Missoula staff. Thank you. And do we need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Kent, was that a second?
Yes.
The Historic Preservation Commission of Missoula is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emmy.